I never thought I'd be the guy posting something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for 5 years. We met right after college, and honestly, I thought we had a pretty good thing going. At least I did. She's always been a little bitchy, yes, but I chalked it up to her being a strong, independent woman. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I never suspected she'd do something as downright disgusting as cheat on me. In the beginning, everything seemed normal. We'd go out on date nights, take trips, joke around at home. But over the last few months, I started noticing small things. She'd be more secretive with her phone, always hiding it when I walked into the room or trying to give me that I'm innocent look when I caught her texting late at night. She'd also become more dismissive, snapping at me when I asked simple questions about her day or plans. It wasn't that she was cheating. I told myself just stress, maybe work. But then came the odd things, small stuff that gnawed at me. Her perfume changing, for one. She'd buy a new lipstick or wear different clothes when she went to the gym. And she started canceling plans with friends last minute, always citing some urgent work thing or family stuff. The worst part, she was acting so innocent about everything, like I was crazy for even doubting her. That bitchy tone when I called her out on her lies was a dead giveaway. She'd roll her eyes and say, "You're paranoid, Mike. I'd never cheat on you. Why would I do that? You're not even that good in bed anymore." That last comment, I swear, was a punch to the gut. She's always been a little self-absorbed, but lately she'd been downright mean and dismissive, like I was just some guy she tolerated, not someone she loved. Still, I kept quiet, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention. But then, the night of our wedding anniversary changed everything. We went out to dinner at that fancy place we liked, stuffed ourselves, drank some wine, and she kept flirting with me, but it felt fake. I remember her giving me that half smile, like she was hiding something. She was acting overly affectionate, maybe trying to make it seem like everything was perfect. After dinner, we headed home, and that's when I noticed it. I was about to go to bed when I saw her shirt on the bathroom sink. I paused, curious. She left her laundry in the hamper earlier, but I'd never paid much attention to her clothes. I reached for her shirt, and that's when I saw it. A bright red lipstick stain right on the collar. Nothing shocking, right? Except that she's never worn that lipstick, and I know she hates that color. I looked closer and saw a faint smudge, something more than just lipstick. I started feeling strange, like I'd been punched in the stomach. I didn't even think about it, I just grabbed her shirt, then went and checked her purse. That's when I found the lipstick tube, something she swore she never wore, hidden deep inside her bag. I looked at the lipstick again, then at her shirt, and it all clicked. The thing is, I didn't even have to look hard to find proof. I knew she was lying. This wasn't just some innocent makeup smudge. It was evidence of something nasty. I kept my cool for a while, but inside I was boiling. I waited until she came home from work, and when she got in, I just lost it. I held up her shirt in front of her face and asked, "Who's this lipstick on your shirt? Who have you been meeting?" Her eyes widened for a second, and then she started with her usual bullshit, saying I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that it was just a mistake. But I wasn't buying it. I told her I knew she'd been lying for months. That she'd been sneaking around, meeting some guy, my best friend actually, at our family cabin when I was working late or out of town. I told her I saw her lipstick and her secret calls. She just scoffed, acted like I was an idiot, and told me I was overreacting, saying, "You're just jealous because I don't want to have sex with you anymore. Maybe I found someone who actually knows how to treat me." That was when I felt the rage boiling over, but I kept it together. I didn't want to lose my cool in that moment, but inside I was crushed. How could she do this? How could she lie so casually, betray me, and cheat with my best friend? It all felt like some bad joke. I knew then that my marriage was over, at least the version I thought I knew. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed up, staring at that shirt and replaying everything she said, every lie, every betrayal. I knew I had to plan something, but I wasn't sure what yet. All I knew was this was just the beginning. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't get the image of her lipstick smudge out of my head. It was like a virus eating away at me, and I started noticing even more things that confirmed her lies. She was more secretive than ever, hiding her phone even when she used the bathroom, and her stories about where she'd been or who she'd seen didn't add up anymore. I was spiraling into this mix of anger, heartbreak, and a sick feeling of betrayal. I needed to catch her in the act or at least gather enough evidence to confront her properly. So, I started paying closer attention. I installed a GPS app on her phone, not proud of that, but I was desperate, and I kept track of her movements. For weeks she kept up her story about work and catching up with friends, but I was seeing different signs. She'd leave the house late at night, come back unusually early in the morning, and her phone was always glued to her hand. Every time I asked her about her whereabouts, she'd brush me off, saying I was overly paranoid or insecure. One afternoon, I decided to go through her stuff when she was at work, just to see if I could find more proof. I didn't want to be the creepy husband, but I felt like I was running out of options. I rifled through her purse and found a few receipts from that cabin, things I never knew she'd bought, like candles and snacks. The receipts were dated on the weekends she'd always claimed to be at work late. It was clear she'd been lying for a long time. Then, I found her phone tucked away in her closet. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but I was already past the point of no return. I unlocked it and scrolled through her messages. That's when I saw it, a text conversation with my best friend Danny. It wasn't just innocent chatting. They were planning secret meetups, talking about how much they missed each other when I wasn't around. I saw pictures too, her in a skimpy tank top, him in his truck leaning in close, whispering about how they can't keep doing this but just can't stop. That was the moment I felt my blood boil. I couldn't take it anymore. I was furious, but I also felt numb. I'd always trusted Danny. He was my best man at our wedding, for God's sake. How could he do this to me? How could Lisa lie to my face every day, then secretly cheat behind my back? I knew I needed to confront them both, but wanted to do it on my terms, in a way that would hit them where it hurt. The next few days, I kept calm. I made a plan. I decided I'd confront them both at the cabin, where all the lies had been happening. I knew she was going there every weekend, and I had to catch her in the act. I wanted her to see the damage she'd done, to understand what she'd lost. I also wanted Danny to face his betrayal. I figured if I could catch them together, I'd finally have proof enough to end this nightmare once and for all. So I packed a bag, drove out to the cabin, and waited. It was a freezing Saturday afternoon when I saw Lisa pulling up in her car. She looked nervous, maybe a little guilty, but she still had that bitchy attitude, like she thought she was untouchable. I stayed hidden behind some trees, watching her get out. She went straight inside, and I followed quietly. I had my phone ready, recording everything. What I saw next hit me like a punch to the stomach. Lisa was in the cabin, sitting close to Danny on the couch, their faces so damn intimate I could see the affection in her eyes. They were kissing, full-on, passionate kisses, and she was whispering something I couldn't hear. I felt my chest tighten, like I was about to explode. My whole world crumbled in that moment. I didn't storm in immediately. I waited, gathered my courage, and then stepped inside, making sure I had everything on record. Lisa saw me and froze, her face twisting into that same bitchy sneer she always wore when she thought she was above everyone. Danny looked caught, but that smug, guilty expression on his face made me want to break something. I looked at her and said, "So this is what you've been hiding from me, meeting my best friend at the cabin for months?" Her response was a typical lie. "Mike, I can explain, it's not what you think. We're just friends, just talking. He's just helping me with some stuff around the house. It's not even that serious." She threw her hands in the air like she was annoyed, like I was the one overreacting. That's when I saw her trying to cover her mouth with her hand, probably trying to hide her smile, like she enjoyed being caught. I felt like I'd been punched again, but I held it together. I looked at Danny, who was pretending to be innocent but was obviously trying to justify himself, and then I turned back to Lisa. I told her I had everything on camera, that I knew she'd been lying for months. Her eyes flickered and she spat, "You're crazy. You're just jealous because I don't want to have sex with you anymore. That's all this is." I was so angry I barely knew what I was doing, but I said, "You're done, both of you. I want out of this marriage. I want nothing to do with your lies anymore." I walked out of that cabin with the footage on my phone, my mind racing. I knew this was the end, but I also knew I'd never trust either of them again. I felt empty, betrayed, and like I'd lost a part of myself I'd never get back. That's when I realized the real pain wasn't just about the cheating. It was about how she lied, how she played me for a fool, and how my best friend turned into my worst enemy. I didn't sleep that night, just stared at the screen, replaying everything, trying to find some way to make sense of it. But honestly, I just felt numb. I knew I had to decide what to do next, but right now, I just wanted to get as far away from that betrayal as possible. The following days were a blur. After I left the cabin with the footage, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her lips pressed against Danny, their hands intertwined, the sneer she threw at me when I finally confronted her. It all felt like a punch to the gut, and honestly I was furious, angrier than I'd ever been in my life. But beneath that, there was also a deep, aching sadness. I had trusted her for 5 years. My mind kept replaying all the moments I missed, the signals I ignored, the times she dismissed my concerns like I was some paranoid idiot. When I thought about it, I realized I'd been blind, or maybe just hoping she'd change. The first thing I did was tell my brother, Mark. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself, not with how raw I was feeling. When I showed him the footage, his jaw dropped. He looked angry, too, more at her than at me, I think. Mark told me to get my stuff out of her place, to file for divorce if I needed to, and to not let her manipulate me anymore. That was the first step, getting some clarity, some space from all this chaos. I booked a lawyer and I started making plans. I didn't want to be the fool anymore, but it was hard. Every time I heard her voice on the phone or saw her name pop up on my screen, my heart clenched. I'd replay her lies, her sneers, her stupid excuses, and I'd feel the rage boiling again. I was angry at her for cheating, sure, but more than that, I was furious at how she'd lied so effortlessly for months. It was like she had no remorse, no shame. She had painted herself as the victim, as if I was the one who'd done something wrong. That made it even worse, her ability to twist everything around, to turn her betrayal into some kind of "I'm just misunderstood" story. One night, I finally got enough courage to call her. I told her I knew everything, the affair, the lies, the secret meetups. I told her I was done, that I wanted a divorce, and I wanted her out of my life. Her reaction was typical. She scoffed, said I was overreacting, that I was just jealous because she found someone who actually cares about her, and that I'd regret pushing her away. That bitchy tone, like she was rubbing it in my face, made my stomach churn. I wanted to scream at her, to break something, but I held my voice, knowing I had to stay calm for the moment. Inside, I was seething. The hardest part wasn't just the betrayal, it was the realization that I had been so blind. I kept asking myself what I missed, what signs I ignored. I kept thinking about all those nights I stayed up, waiting for her to come home, not knowing she was with Danny, not knowing she'd been lying to me the entire time. I felt like a damn fool. And every time I looked at that footage, her lips on Danny, her smile as she lied, I felt a mix of disgust and heartbreak. I knew I had to do something about it. I couldn't just let this go. The plan was forming in my mind. I decided I'd confront her again, face to face, and demand she leave. I also wanted to see her reaction when she realized I had proof that she could never deny again. I wanted her to see how much I knew and how little she had left to hide. So I arranged to meet her at her apartment. I told her I wanted to talk, that I needed her to tell me the truth face to face. When she opened the door, she had that smirk on her face, like she thought she was still in control. I took out my phone, showed her the footage, and said, "This is what I found. All your lies, all your cheating. I know everything." Her face drained of color, but she quickly gathered her composure and started with her usual bullshit, trying to make me feel guilty, saying I was paranoid, that she loved me, but she just needed little asterisk freedom, and that Danny was just a friend. I didn't buy a single word. I told her I was done, that I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. I told her to pack her bags and leave my house. That was the moment she finally snapped. She yelled, called me a controlling asshole, said I was just jealous because she's better than me in bed, and that I'd regret throwing her away. But I didn't feel anything except cold rage and disappointment. Her words bounced off me. I knew this wasn't about love anymore, it was about justice. That night I stayed. up all night packing my stuff. I didn't want to stay in the same house with her anymore. As I put things in boxes, I kept thinking about everything that she lied, cheated, and played me like a fool. I thought about our wedding, how I thought I was marrying someone I loved, and how that trust was broken beyond repair. I felt numb but resolute. I knew I had to cut her out of my life for my own sanity. This was over. The betrayal had cut too deep. I realized I'd come to a point where I had to rebuild myself from the ground up. Trust was gone, respect was shattered, and all I had left was the truth, raw, ugly, and unavoidable. I didn't sleep that night either. I just sat on the floor, staring at the boxes, thinking about what I'd do next. I knew I had to move on, but it hurt so much to accept that everything I believed in was a lie. Still, I promised myself I'd get through this, and someday I'd find a way to be happy again. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I moved out of the house, leaving behind the memories, the betrayal, and the wreckage of what I thought was my life. It wasn't easy. I had to find a new place to stay, deal with the legal mess, and somehow process the emotional fallout. Every night I'd lie in bed, replaying everything, her sneers, her lies, the way she looked at Danny like he was her savior. It all felt like a cruel joke, like I'd been played for a fool on a massive scale. I knew I needed to get some perspective, so I started talking to my brother more often. Mark was the one who kept me grounded, reminding me of who I was outside of that horrible marriage. He told me not to blame myself. Sometimes people just betray you, no matter how much you love them. But that didn't stop the guilt creeping in. Did I miss the signs? Was I too blind, too trusting? I kept thinking about all those nights I ignored her cold attitude, all those little lies she told to keep me in the dark. I also made a decision. I was going to confront Danny. I wanted him to see what he'd done to me, to us. I knew it would bring back what I lost, but I needed closure. I reached out to him and arranged to meet at a bar downtown. I knew he'd be there, probably trying to avoid me, but I didn't care. I needed answers, and I needed to hear it straight from him. When I saw him sitting alone at the corner table, I felt my stomach tight. He looked guilty, but that smirk on his face told me he thought he was smarter than me. I sat down across from him, stared him in the eyes, and said, "You thought I didn't know, huh? You've been sleeping with my wife at the cabin, haven't you, for months?" His face flickered with a mix of guilt and arrogance, but I wasn't having any of it. I pressed on. "You're supposed to be my best friend. How could you do this to me, to us?" He looked down, fiddling with his glass, trying to dodge the question. Then he finally looked up with a half smile and said, "Look, Mike, I didn't mean for it to happen. She's not the person you think she is. She's been so bitchy, so controlling. Honestly, I just needed someone who understood me. Your wife's not the innocent girl you married. She's been playing me too, lying, manipulating, and honestly, I don't regret it. It felt good to finally be with someone who actually cares about me." That was it. I felt a surge of rage I couldn't contain. I slammed my hand on the table and my voice came out harsher than I intended. "You're pathetic. You're supposed to be my friend, and you're just as much a part of this betrayal as she is. You're both disgusting. I trusted you, Danny. I thought you were better than this." He shrugged, unfazed. "Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. Either way, you're better off without her. She's a nightmare, man, always bitching, always lying. I think she was just waiting for the right moment to dump you anyway. Sorry, but that's the truth." Hearing that just made me feel even more numb. I left the bar that night knowing I'd never get those months back. I'd never get that trust again. I was just a guy who lost everything: his wife, his best friend, his sense of security. But I also knew I had to move on. I couldn't stay stuck in that anger forever. I started thinking about what I was going to do next, how to rebuild my life, how to heal from this betrayal. I realized that forgiveness wasn't going to come easily. Not for her, not for Danny, maybe not ever. But I could choose to stop letting this define me. I needed to focus on myself. I signed papers to start the divorce process, filed everything legally, and started looking for new jobs. I wanted to get as far away from that whole chapter as possible. One thing I learned: betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you about resilience. I had to accept that I'd been lied to, that my trust had been shattered, and that I would have to start over. That's what I kept telling myself. I would rebuild. I'd find happiness again, even if it meant rebuilding from the ruins of what I once thought was love. I knew I couldn't undo what had been done, but I could control how I moved forward. And that's what I was going to do, step by step, day by day. The process of healing was anything but linear. Some days I felt like I was making progress, like I was finally starting to breathe again, and other days I'd wake up feeling like a total failure, drowning in the memories of her lies and her betrayal. It was hard to trust anyone after all this. Every time I met someone new or even talked to friends, I'd catch myself wondering if they were secretly judging me or if they saw through the broken parts of me I was trying to hide. But I knew I had to move on. I started focusing on myself, going to the gym, working on my career, trying to rebuild my confidence. I even went on a couple of dates, though it was awkward at first. I kept telling myself that I deserved better than a woman who could cheat and lie like that, who could manipulate my feelings for her own selfish satisfaction. Still, there was a part of me that felt guilty for feeling any happiness at all, like I was betraying my own pain, forgetting what I'd lost. I became more distant from Lisa, of course. She kept trying to contact me, begging for another chance, saying she was sorry, claiming she'd changed. But I didn't buy it. I told her I needed space, that she'd broken trust beyond repair. She threw tantrums, called me names, told me I was overreacting, that I was just bitter because I lost control. Honestly, I just blocked her number after a while and avoided her whenever I could. I didn't want to hear her voice or see her face. I knew that if I saw her again, I'd probably lose whatever resolve I had left. One thing I did realize was just how much her lies had affected me. I'd become paranoid, questioning everything and everyone. The smallest things, like a missed call or a text, made me jumpy. I had to consciously remind myself that not everyone was out to get me, that not every woman was like Lisa. It was a long, hard process, and I knew I wasn't fully healed yet. But I was trying. That's all I could do. And then there was Danny. I never wanted to see him again, but I knew I had to face the fact that he was as much a part of this as Lisa. I reached out to him one last time, telling him I wanted to hear the truth straight. From him, no more lies. We agreed to meet at a quiet restaurant. When I saw him sitting there, bracing myself for whatever he might say, I felt a strange mix of anger and indifference. He looked at me with that same smug look, like he thought he'd won. I took a deep breath and said, "Look, Danny, I want you to know something. I don't hate you, but I'm damn disappointed. You were supposed to be my friend. You betrayed me, lied to my face, and helped destroy my marriage. Honestly, I don't know how you sleep at night." He shrugged and said, "Honestly, Mike, I don't care. I'm happier now. I finally got what I wanted, someone who actually cares for me. Maybe you should have been a better husband. Maybe she was just tired of waiting around for you to notice her. People change, man. Sometimes they just move on." That hit me hard. I stared at him, realizing how much I'd trusted him, how much I'd believed he was my friend. I felt a strange, cold emptiness inside. I knew I'd never be able to forgive him, not completely. But I also knew that holding on to that anger would only hurt me more. I nodded and said, "Just stay away from me and Lisa. I don't want to hear from either of you again. I need to rebuild my life, and I won't let you two ruin whatever's left of it." Walking out of that restaurant, I felt a strange sense of relief. Not happiness, not closure, but a small step forward. I realized that I couldn't change what had happened, but I could choose how I responded. I could either let this destroy me or use it as a catalyst to become stronger. I chose the latter. Now I'm still healing, still figuring out who I am without her, without Danny. I've started therapy to deal with the betrayal and the trust issues. I'm learning to forgive myself for missing the signs, for trusting the wrong people. I know I won't forget what happened, but I can learn to live with it. I've come to terms with the fact that some people are just unreliable, selfish, and manipulative. And I've also realized that I'm better off without them. Most importantly, I've learned that I'm not defined by their betrayal. I'm still me, strong, resilient, and capable of finding happiness again. It's going to take time, but I promise myself I'll get there. Because after all this, I know one thing for sure. I deserve someone who values and respects me. And I won't settle for less anymore. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me. It's like I've been through a war, not with anyone else, but with my own feelings, anger, sadness, betrayal, all tangled together. Some days I wake up feeling broken, and other days I find a little piece of myself that I didn't know was still there. The biggest lesson I've learned is that trust is fragile, and once it's shattered, rebuilding it takes a long, hard road. I've come to accept that some people aren't worth the pain they cause. Lisa, with her sneering lies and manipulations, was never the person I thought she was. And Danny, my supposed best friend, turned out to be just another player in her game. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but I know now that my happiness doesn't depend on them. It depends on me. My future, my peace of mind, and my own integrity are what matter most. I've started focusing on myself and my goals again. I got a new job, moved into a place where I can breathe and think clearly. I've made new friends and I find comfort in the simple things, going for walks, reading, working out. It's not about forgetting what happened. It's about learning to live with it and not letting it define me. Every day, I remind myself I'm stronger than the betrayal, and I deserve better than someone who could lie and cheat like she did. If I could give anyone advice from this mess, it would be this: don't ignore the signs. Don't let your doubts fester because you're afraid of losing what you have. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. Don't take it lightly. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And if that trust is broken, don't be afraid to walk away. It's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't value you. Most importantly, don't forget that you are worthy of love and respect. No matter how much someone hurts you, that doesn't define your worth. You get to decide your future, your happiness, and your peace of mind. Healing takes time, and it's okay to feel lost sometimes. Just hold on to the hope that things will get better, and they will. I'm still on that journey, still working through the pain, but I know now that I will come out stronger. Because what I've learned is that betrayal can break you, but it can also rebuild you if you let it. And I choose to rebuild, better, wiser, and more aware of what I truly deserve.